My family stole my company, so I took it back and left them with nothing. You always hear that you should never go into business with family. I always thought that was a cliche, something people said who didn't have a tight-knit group like mine. I was wrong, dead wrong. I built a $1 million company from the ground up, and to share my success, I gave my own father, uncle, and brother a stake in it. I thought we were a team. Instead, they saw it as their opportunity. They bided their time, undermined me at every turn, and then, in the middle of a pandemic, they used the power I'd given them to vote me out of my own dream. They took everything, but they forgot one crucial detail. I was the one who built it in the first place, and I knew exactly how to build it again, this time without them. This is the story of how I went from having it all, to losing it all, to taking it all back, and watching the people who betrayed me get crushed in the silence they created. Let's get one thing straight from the start. My family has always been about business, but they've never actually owned anything. They've spent their entire lives working for someone else, clocking in and out, thinking they're living the dream because they get a decent paycheck and a pat on the back at the company Christmas party. My dad was a corporate lifer, the kind of guy who'd proudly show you his engraved pen after 20 years of service. My uncle was cut from the same cloth, just with a fancier job title that made him sound more important than he was. And my brother, well, he wasn't anything special either, just another cog in the machine, content to do the bare minimum and complain about it. I knew from a young age that I wasn't going to waste my life like that. I wanted something more, something that was mine. So, after slogging through a few soul-sucking jobs, managing to save up a little cash, I decided to take the plunge. I was going to start my own thing, a tech startup. I had a solid idea, one I believed in with my whole heart, but what I didn't have was enough money to get it off the ground. That's when, against my better judgment, I turned to my family. I sat them down in my parents' living room, a room filled with participation trophies and corporate plaques, and I pitched my business idea like I was on Shark Tank. I laid out my vision, the market research, the potential for growth. I told them that if they helped me get investors, I'd give them stakes in the company. It wasn't a handout, it was a business proposition. They were getting a piece of the pie if it worked out, a potentially very large piece. To my absolute surprise, they actually came through. I didn't think they'd take me seriously at first. My dad is the kind of guy who thinks entrepreneurship is just a fancy way of saying unemployed. But they pulled some strings, called up a few people they knew from their years of being company men, and boom, I had investors. Not just any investors either. These were the real deal, people with deep pockets and even deeper connections. I was floored. For the first time in my life, I felt like my family actually believed in me, saw the same potential I saw in myself. And they didn't just stop at finding investors, they started getting involved in the business itself, tossing around ideas, offering advice, and even helping with some of the grunt work. I thought it was great at the time. I was so caught up in the moment, thinking, wow, my family actually has my back. We're a team. What I didn't see it was what it really was, the beginning of them worming their way into something they didn't build, planting their flags on a land they hadn't discovered. Anyway, I busted my ass getting that company off the ground. I'm talking late nights that bled into early mornings, skipped meals, and a social life that became a distant memory. It was a grind like nothing I had ever experienced before, but I loved every second of it, and it paid off. By the second year, my startup blew up. I'm talking real, tangible success. The kind of success that makes your head spin and your bank account feel like it's been hooked up to a fire hose. We were making deals left and right, and the industry was starting to take notice. I finally felt like all my hard work, all those sacrifices were paying off. That's when my family started showing up more, their presence growing in direct proportion to the company's success. At first, I didn't think much of it. My dad and uncle quit their stable corporate jobs to work with me full-time, and my brother did the same, abandoning his dead-end position. I thought it was awesome. Who wouldn't want their family involved in something so personal and important? My dad would show up to important client meetings, pretending he was the big boss, even though he didn't understand half the stuff we were discussing, often nodding along with a serious expression before asking a basic question later. My uncle started acting like he was some kind of business guru because he had a background in finance, throwing out terms he barely understood. And my brother? That dude didn't know a thing about running a company, but he strutted around the office like he was Elon Musk or something, offering unsolicited opinions and taking credit for other people's work. Looking back, there were so many red flags I should have seen, but I didn't. I was too caught up in the success, too high on the feeling of having my family by my side. I mean, how could I complain? My company was thriving, and my family was finally coming together. My brother and I, who used to fight like cats and dogs over the dumbest stuff, like whose turn it was to take out the trash, were actually getting along. We weren't arguing anymore. We were working together. It felt like my business had healed all the old wounds between us. I was proud. Hell, I thought this was what success was supposed to feel like. But man, was I wrong. So damn wrong. I think back to all the little things I ignored, like how my family kept telling me to watch my back around my friends and employees. They'd say things like, "You never know who's just trying to use you," or "Be careful with your girlfriend, she might just be here for the money." At the time, I thought they were looking out for me. Who wouldn't trust their own family? But now, I realized they were planting seeds, isolating me, making sure I thought the only people I could truly trust were them. And the worst part is, I fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. The first real crack in the facade appeared during the pandemic. Like everyone else, we went remote, and our meetings shifted to online platforms. That's when the power play, which had been simmering beneath the surface, started to boil. Suddenly, my ideas weren't good enough anymore. The same ideas that had built the company from the ground up, the very foundation of our success, were now being shot down left and right. My dad and uncle would gang up on me during Zoom meetings, their faces filling my screen in a united front of disapproval. My brother would sit there like a smug little jerk, nodding along with whatever they said, his silent agreement more infuriating than any argument. They'd suggest their own half-baked ideas, acting like they were the saviors of the company, the only ones with the vision to navigate the crisis. It was exhausting. I went from loving my job to dreading it. The company I built, the place that gave me a sense of purpose, was turning into a source of anxiety and stress. And the worst part was, I didn't know how to stop it. My family wasn't just employees anymore. They were part owners now. They had stakes in the company, and they weren't afraid to use that power against me. At the time, I brushed it off, thinking it was just a rough patch, a symptom of the stressful times. Deep down, though, I think I knew things were starting to go downhill. My family wasn't here to help me, they were here to take over, and I was too blind to see it. The mutiny started in earnest during one of our online strategy sessions. I brought up a plan to pivot some of our operations to adapt to the lockdowns, a solid idea I had put weeks of research into. But before I could even finish explaining the concept, my dad cut me off, his voice dripping with condescension. He didn't think that was going to work. My uncle immediately jumped in, agreeing with him, and my brother, of course, sided with them. They proposed their own plan, which was basically just rehashing what we were already doing, but with fancier, more corporate-sounding words. I tried to push back, presenting data and logical arguments, but they steamrolled me. They had the majority vote. So their shitty plan got approved, and mine got tossed aside like yesterday's news. That meeting was the first time I felt like an outsider in my own company. I couldn't even recognize the business I had built anymore. Things got worse from there, much worse. My brother, who had no clue how to manage anything more complicated than his Netflix queue, started acting like he was running the show. He'd send out company-wide emails, signing off as if he were the CEO, and even started making decisions without consulting me, like changing project timelines or approving minor expenses. When I confronted him about it, he'd just brush it off, saying he was just taking initiative, as if I should be proud of him for overstepping his bounds. My dad and uncle weren't any better. They started holding meetings without me, making decisions behind my back about things that were squarely in my domain. When I found out, they acted like it was no big deal, claiming they didn't want to bother me with the small stuff. The small stuff. They were calling the small stuff the things I used to handle every single day. I tried to push back, to reassert my authority, but it was like talking to a brick wall. They had me outnumbered, and they knew it. Every time I brought up an issue, they'd gang up on me, making me feel like I was the problem, like I was being emotional or difficult. My uncle would say I needed to separate my feelings from the company's needs, and my brother, that little jerk, had the nerve to suggest that maybe I should take a step back and let them handle things for a while. The audacity of that guy still pisses me off when I think about it. By the time we hit the midpoint of the lockdowns, I was miserable. My anxiety was through the roof, and I was having panic attacks before meetings. The company I once loved felt like a prison, and my family were the wardens. I knew something had to give, but I wasn't ready to admit just how bad things had gotten. The writing was on the wall for a while, but I was too wrapped up in trying to fix things to see what was coming.
It all came to a head during a mid-year review meeting. I came in prepared, thinking it would be a tough but straightforward discussion about our performance. I should have known better. Right out of the gate, my uncle, in all his smug glory, suggested that maybe I should be on the chopping block. At first, I thought it was a joke. I mean, who says that to the person who built the company from scratch? But nope, he was dead serious. He started talking about how my brother had stepped up during the pandemic and was now handling most of the responsibilities. According to him, it only made sense for my brother to officially take over my role. I was floored. My brother taking over my role? The same guy who once confused gross revenue with net profit during a client presentation? Before I could even process what was happening, my dad chimed in. He had the audacity to suggest that I either step down voluntarily or accept a demotion. A demotion in my own company. He said it with this fake, concerned tone, like he was doing me a favor, like he was being the reasonable one in the room. He said they just thought it was for the best, as if I was some intern who had screwed up too many coffee orders. I looked around the virtual meeting, waiting for someone, anyone to defend me. But there was no one. My uncle nodded along like a bobblehead, and my brother, that little snake, didn't even have the guts to make eye contact with the camera. He just stared at his desk, probably hoping I wouldn't call him out on his bullshit. I tried to argue, to remind them of everything I had done, but they shut me down so fast it was like they had rehearsed it. My dad started talking about how business is business and how I needed to separate my emotions from the company's needs. My uncle backed him up,
throwing in some nonsense about the greater good and how my brother was the natural leader. The whole thing was a setup, and I had walked right into it. They voted me out. Just like that, my own family voted me out of my own company. I didn't even know what to say. I just sat there staring at the screen, trying to figure out how the hell I had let it get to this point. These were the people I was supposed to trust most in the world, and they had stabbed me in the back without a second thought. The rest of the meeting was a blur. They moved on like nothing had happened, talking about next steps and assigning my responsibilities to my brother. It was like I didn't exist anymore. I logged off without saying a word. What could I say? Anything I wanted to scream at them would have just made me look even worse in their eyes. After the meeting, I sat in my home office for hours, just staring at the wall. I couldn't believe it. My family, my own flesh and blood, had just kicked me to the curb. I felt like such an idiot for ever trusting them. All those late nights, all the sacrifices, all the times I went above and beyond, it didn't mean a thing to them. They saw an opportunity to take over, and they took it. I spent the next few days trying to figure out what to do. Part of me wanted to fight back, to lawyer up and sue their asses into oblivion. But the other part of me, the part that was tired, broken, and just plain done, wanted to walk away. The thought of going back to that toxic environment made my skin crawl. In the end, I chose to resign. Maybe it was the coward's way out, but I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't keep pretending like everything was fine when it was tearing me apart inside. So, I wrote up my resignation letter, sent it off, and that was that. I was officially out. Leaving the company was like ripping off a bandage that hadn't fully healed. It stung like hell, but there was a strange sense of relief, too. I was free from the backstabbing and manipulation, but I was also out on my own, with nothing but my savings and a bruised ego. It wasn't exactly a movie moment where the hero walks off into the sunset with a triumphant grin. No, it was more like walking into a storm, clutching a broken umbrella and hoping to make it out alive. The first few months after resigning were rough. I had to move out of my cushy apartment and into a much smaller place to cut costs. Selling my car was next, which felt like another punch to the gut. That car was one of the few luxuries I'd allowed myself after years of grinding, but it had to go. Pride wasn't going to pay the bills. Starting over wasn't just about finances, though. It was about finding a way to rebuild my confidence. I spent weeks spiraling, questioning everything. Was I even capable of building another business, or was my family right? Was I just lucky the first time? I hated that their voices were still in my head, even after I'd cut them out of my life. Eventually, I got tired of feeling sorry for myself. One morning, I woke up, looked around my tiny apartment, and thought, this isn't it. This can't be where my story ends. That's when I decided to stop sulking and start working. I didn't know what the hell my next move was going to be, but I knew I had to make one. I started brainstorming ideas for a new business, something completely different from what I'd done before.
I didn't want anything that reminded me of the old company or the people who ruined it for me. It had to be mine, something I could pour myself into without anyone else's fingerprints on it. Building the new business was a grind, even harder than the first time. I was working 12 to 14-hour days, juggling a million tasks at once. Some days, I didn't even know if I'd have enough money to make it to the next week. I lived off ramen and instant coffee.
The kind of diet that screams broke entrepreneur. But I didn't care. Every small step forward felt like a victory. The loneliness was the hardest part. My family was gone, blocked on every platform I could think of. They didn't deserve access to my life anymore. I cut ties with anyone who even remotely reminded me of them, which meant my social circle got a lot smaller. The only person who stuck around was my wife. She was my rock, the one person who believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. If it weren't for her, I don't think I would have made it through those first few months. About a year in, things finally started turning around. The new business began to take shape, and by some miracle, it started generating revenue. It wasn't much at first, just enough to keep the lights on, but it was a start, and that was all I needed. By the second year, the new business was thriving. It wasn't just doing well, it was doing better than my first company ever had. I finally felt like I was back on solid ground. And the best part was, this time, I was surrounded by people I trusted. No family drama, no backstabbing, just a tight-knit team of people who believed in the vision as much as I did. Cutting off my family was one of the hardest decisions I'd ever made, but it was also the most freeing. Then came the shocker. I found out my old company was tanking. A mutual friend who used to work there gave me the rundown. After I left, my family basically stopped giving a damn. My dad, my uncle, and my brother treated it like their personal ATM, draining money to buy luxury cars and other crap they didn't need. Meanwhile, they let the actual business fall apart. Employees started leaving in droves, clients jumped ship, and the company that I built from nothing was circling the drain. Hearing that pissed me off more than I thought it would. I'd worked my ass off to make that company a success, and they destroyed it in less than 2 years. Part of me wanted to gloat, to laugh at their failure, but another part of me just felt sad for the company itself. It didn't deserve to go down like that. As far as I was concerned, my family could sink with the ship they'd stolen from me. I was finally in a good place, my new business was thriving, and I'd moved on. Or so I thought. But of course, life has a way of dragging you back into the mess you thought you'd escaped. It all started when I was reviewing resumes for a senior position. I saw his name, my brother. I decided to schedule the interview, not because I wanted to hire him, but because I needed answers. The day of the interview, he walked into my office looking like a ghost of his former self. He froze when he saw me. The interview was awkward, painfully so. He wasn't qualified, not even close. As he stood to leave, I hit him with the same line he'd thrown at me during that fateful meeting years ago. I told him his contributions would be better suited to a lower-level role. The look on his face was priceless. Within hours, my phone started blowing up with texts and calls from my family, accusing me of being spiteful. In the end, I decided to meet with them. I needed closure. When I walked into that meeting, they looked desperate. "I'll buy the company," I said, cutting straight to the point. "But under one condition. You're all out. No stakes, no positions, nothing. You walk away with the cash, and that's it." They argued, of course, but in the end, they caved. They needed the money more than they needed their pride. Walking out of that meeting felt damn good. For the first time in years, I felt like I'd won. I took back what was mine, and I did it on my terms. My family can keep their guilt trips and their sob stories. I'm done with them.